did not have people like standing in a mirror in a thong taking pictures.
It's like hot or not, and like validation kind of almost like, oh, all these people think I'm cute.
When I was 23, I was love bombing too. I was the love bomb. That's the problem.
I think hookup culture probably started with the boost of like LGBT culture, and like I know a big part of LGBT culture does have to do with hookups, because back then having a relationship with another person of the same sex wasn't as easy. But I don't think it's generally new.
Hookup culture. Hooking up is just hooking up, doing it, and bouncing.
I think it goes back to the dawn of time. It's like people were hooking up in the royal courts, I think. But what's changed, it seems like to me, is who has the ability to hook up. Because I think like if you were a housewife in the suburbs in the 40s and your husband was a businessman, he had more opportunities to hook up than you did probably. It was not a level playing field. I mean, when I was in high school, most of us were hooking up. We didn't call it that. There was no internet. It was like you met at a party, or in college you met people at bars or at the club scene. I would not want to be dealing with a dating app, particularly now. That would freak me out. But
I guess like the internet introduced a layer to dating that wasn't there before. Yeah, I don't know what forms it's taken throughout, but the form that I'm familiar with and what I think it is sort of like the dating apps, etc. The one thing that comes to mind is how it makes it too casual. It makes it too almost disposable, the idea of how you go around meeting people, because that's part of the thing about the internet is like too very quick, very to the point, very like moving on to the next thing.
You know, when I was like in my 20s, we would call like hook up a one-night stand. A one-night stand was kind of more spontaneous, whereas I think the internet's changed things because you organize to have a hookup, which is kind of a different thought process. And so I think that has really changed things.
It depends on what you say, and it also depends on whether you're an honest person coming into what somebody else said, or if you're going to be in bad faith and be like, oh, well, I would like to go on a date even though I know that this person is not looking for casual, is looking long term.
I used to date on the internet. Nobody was what they said they were. One girl I talked to for like 3 years, and she lied from the beginning, and to the end it was a lie.
I've had Hinge, but I kind of use it as just like a little game, like it's like hot or not, and like validation kind of almost, like, oh, all these people think I'm cute. But I don't really like text them usually. And also I feel like with our generation, it's solely used as like just to hook up. Like I already know what half of these guys want. And it's like, how interested could I really be?
It is like a collector's game when you really think about it. I mean, people aren't thinking about it at the time that they're doing it, but it's kind of like a drug. You're just trying to get an easy high and then move on.
it seems like there's like an audience aspect to it now that we didn't have. Like, people around you in your social group might have known who you were hooking up with, but there was no social media. It wasn't like there was an audience for this or you were getting all this feedback.
It's very artificial. It's not natural. It's kind of like you see everything on the internet of what a relationship should be, or a relationship looks like on the internet, with all buying gifts and going on these fancy dates and doing couples things together. And then you try to cram that into your own relationship despite whatever things you have going on in your life, and it ruins it. It's not a real thing. It's like you're just acting.
Like, everyone knows your business, and it's like, I'm just trying to be sneaky.
Like, it almost seems to me like sometimes when I'm looking at young people's social media posts, like, they're selling themselves. Like, you know, we did not have people like standing in a mirror in a thong taking pictures of themselves and putting that out on their like social media page, and you didn't feel like you had to do that. But even now, I'm like 61, maybe I'm 62, I can't remember. That's what happens when you get old. You know, and it's like, I work out and stuff, but I look at like social media stuff and I'm like, should I have like an 8-pack like that guy? Like, maybe I'm not working hard enough. And it's like, that just seems, I feel more pressure now looking at that stuff than I did when I was in high school, because there was nothing to look at.
Based on my daughter and my niece, They both reckon that the hookup culture is really kind of bad for them. Like, it's really confusing. They don't know whether they're going out with someone or they're not. How you kind of navigate that.
Guys are just very like right now wanting one thing, and it's like they all say these things like, I'm gonna make you fall in love with me. Like, no, ew. Like, I just met you. You don't mean it. So yeah, they just say things that they think you want to hear, and then it's like, all right, you're a player. Like,
My answer is, I mean, how old is your daughter and niece?
My niece is like about 30 and my daughter's 23.
23? When I was 23, I was love bombing too. I was the love bomb. That's the problem. I was doing that, but then I got to my 30s and I was like, all right, maybe you need to calm down. I think it's just, I feel like you can't look for it, or you can't like want it. I feel like those people who just be walking through life are the ones who always like fall in love when it's not planned. So I just think it's just like timing, and everything happens when it's supposed to happen. It's also where you're going to meet these people, and honestly their family. Like, you know, like, listen to the background sometimes. Like, do you really want to be involved with that? You know, little things like that. Jess, look at you all in my eyes. You taking notes.
If you went out with someone, then it was kind of monogamous. You weren't supposed to go out with two people at once. There's sort of rules like that.
All the dating we did was like probably more intense and fraught than it needed to be. And I do remember it wasn't just that the guys paid, but the guys drove. I remember once after my parents like split up, my mother had this guy come over that she was dating. She went on like one date with him or something, but he came over and he had this brand new Trans Am. I don't know if anybody knows what it was, like this muscle car. And I remember him saying to me, why don't you take the car tonight? Probably just wanted to get me out of the house. So he gave me this car, and I was like, I gotta go pick up girls. I gotta go to a party and show the car off. And that was like a big deal. Like, if you could get your hands on like a Corvette or a Trans Am or something, didn't matter whose it was, that was a thing. So that went along with paying for the food.
Dating now, like, there are obviously like dates where you go out to the movies or dinner or stuff, but I feel like a lot of it is more casual. I feel like I'd rather just like hang out, like nothing be forced, and like have like more fun than like feeling nervous and like presenting myself a certain way.
Where are people hooking up? Because I remember when I was in high school, my parents were like totally hands off. It was like, bring somebody home and go up to your room and lock the door, which I don't think was the case everywhere, and probably wasn't cool.
Like
but
hooking, like where people like hooking.
yeah,
Right in the back to the left.
I do worry about sitting on some of the furniture.
Go downstairs to the radio station, look to the right.
Yeah.
No, but I definitely think in college it's easier because like dorms, like you're living on your own. In high school, probably like when your parents aren't home, or like your friends' houses, like their parents aren't home, or like a car.
I mean, me personally, I just hook up in my house. I know some people would be the type to want to find a random public spot that's hidden, but I'm not. I'm not risking that situation. But yeah, I'd say like cars, hotels, freaking bathrooms, like
Hooking up places when I was younger, like there's like a whole bunch of motels in the Bronx, and I think it was maybe $100 an hour or something like that, because at that time like we couldn't have company. So I mean, I'm not paying. If I'm with a man and he want to do it, I'm not paying for it. Meeting in real, like in person, I feel like the hookup can happen. I know people who are still together after hooking up on a first date. I feel like it could be either way. You could try it out early and know if you want to like be in it, or you try it out early and you like, I never want to see you again.
I think people should hook up. Maybe not on the first date, but like within the first 3, because a big part of relationships is knowing how your sexual intimacy is. As long as you're being protective and you're not like spreading anything around. Like, yeah, do whatever you want. It's your toy.
But sometimes in relationships, especially if you're in a long-term relationship, sometimes things happen where like the sex could stop, the person gets sick, or like different things can happen. So it does have to be deeper than sex, but it's nice to know that when the person's right, it's nice.
It is kind of weird to me to kind of just like meet up someone just and then kind of hook up that same day that you meet them. So like for me, it makes sense to sort of get to know the person and kind of like see if you can hold a conversation, stuff like that.
I kind of agree with what Harrison said, but on the other hand, I do feel like when I was younger, sex probably mostly got in the way of relationship stuff. Like, it was very easy to not do any of the work that relationships require, because most of the emphasis was like meeting someone and like you're gauging so much of the relationship on like how is the sex. And now I would try to de-emphasize that like way more. I'm also a lot older at this point, so but I do think like when you're a certain age, like the sex can just like become too much of a focus. I think you start to realize, like I only realized this looking back, I was looking probably for all the wrong stuff. Like I wanted somebody who looked a certain way, I wanted somebody who had a certain mystique, like all the stuff that probably wasn't going to amount to somebody you could be in a long-term relationship with, you know? I think like once you're in a long-term relationship, like I've been married now since 92, it's not like all romance and eroticism constantly. It's like work. It's like a tremendous amount of work to keep a relationship going, because you're like the two of you are living with each other and you're going to get on each other's nerves, and you got to figure out whether that person's going to get on your nerves in a way that you can live with and vice versa. And it's not like what you're looking for when you're dating when you're 18 or 19, in my experience.
I think that I was often attracted to people who I knew I shouldn't be attracted to. So I would kind of like enjoy the attraction without following through on it, because I just knew that this was a really unsuitable guy that I had decided was really attractive. So, and then I guess being married is hard. It takes a lot of work. I've been married since 1999. I wasn't really looking for marriage, I don't think, in my early 20s. So I think you choose different people depending on what you're looking for. Even though you don't necessarily realize that you're doing it, subconsciously you kind of have a different agenda. When I was in my teens, I would say that me and my girlfriends anyway, we didn't want to lose our virginity. We were hanging on to it like limpets. And then when when I was older, when my peers were older, it was different. And then some of us made this weird distinction between, are you having a one-night stand? And if you are, then you're having a one-night stand. But then if you're actually interested in a guy, then you wouldn't have sex with him right away. Yeah, so it'd be different. A little hypocritical, really, but there you go.
The virginity, I feel like this generation with society, they're like feeling pressure to lose it earlier because everyone around them is, they feel like. It's either they feel the pressure to lose it earlier or they're like wanting to wait for like the right person. But like they might be embarrassed, which is not how it should be.
As a young man, personally, I'd say pornography was a big thing that pressures young men into wanting to have sex and do all these things in sex. And it's a big problem because not only is it not a realistic perspective of what sex actually is, but it's never the focus on two people having a good time together. It's always just a man dominating a woman or reverse.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Harrison said. I guess for me personally, like my parents are super Catholic, so the combination of too much stigma of even talking about sex to then going through public middle school during an age where the internet is sort of, becoming a thing where you can find anything. It absolutely affected what I thought, I guess, like sex was. And yeah, like it's kind of been, it's like I definitely have had to go through like a process of unlearning like what it actually means to like pleasure someone else versus pleasuring yourself, and kind of having that, you know, equal time or something like that, because that's not what you see in like, you know, porn or the media even.
It's in our music, it's in our video games. Like it's been so normalized to harass women because we expect them to be like, oh, they're just like the porn stars that we see in these little movies and in these music videos that we have. Like it's taken over.
There's like a weird dichotomy because I remember when I first got to college up in Massachusetts, this was a thing. The student union would pick a night and they would literally screen a porn film. Like imagine the SGA deciding to show a porn film here. They would show like Deep Throat, and I remember, yeah, that's what they showed. And you know, it would just be like a full auditorium, and it was like at the same time, porn wasn't that available then. But I think like as much as people would be horrified these days to think that like the SGA would show a porn film to the campus and think that was appropriate, porn is everywhere now. It's like everyone's got it on their phone. Anyone can access it. So there's a weird, you know, like that was so inappropriate back then, but I don't know how appropriate it is now that you can just, you know, like they ask you, are you 18 or something, but any kid could get through that. So
I think that like maybe porn in America's big, but when I was 18 and I went to Amsterdam, I went, I didn't know what we was getting into, but it was like $10, and it was like a auditorium like this size, and the people was on stage having sex. Like it was like act 1, act 2, act 3, and different people would come on and they would just have sex on the stage, and you just sit there and watch it like it's a movie. And I was like, oh wow, they just really just having sex on the stage. But so I guess other places it's just like yeah, it was just regular, like you pay $10 and you watch 10 people have sex on stage. I mean, 10 euros or whatever.
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees, the moon up above, and a thing called love.